Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Entrepreneurship Lab. This is your host, Devin Bajavats, welcoming you once again to the podcast where we help you grow and scale your business. And we bring you experts in different areas so you can develop your skills and create a strategy that's going to work for you. Today, my guest is coming to us all the way from Los Angeles, United States. His name is Blair Nichols, and Blair is an expert. And today we're going to talk about public speaking and how you can develop your public speaking skills. So, Blair, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Blair, you have your own company, you're an entrepreneur, and I would love to hear a bit more about your background, your story. We're going to talk today specifically about public speaking skills, but I know that's not the only thing you're doing. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your expertise and what do you do with your company as well?
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure. So public speaking can be many things, right? Most of my career has been kind of in the paid speaking world where people are being paid a keynote fee for big corporate events or big conferences or associations or other things like that. So I started off in publishing, just kind of having an interest in books and literature and veering away from law school in my undergrad years brought me to publishing, and I landed right in the middle of the HarperCollins Speakers Bureau. So they were the first publishing house to have kind of an in-house speakers bureau for their authors, just helping them get speaking opportunities so they could sell more books and continue the promotion of that author and the books and everything else. But this has been an industry that's been around for, decades, of course, more professionalized in the 20th century, but it's something that people have been doing forever, obviously getting up and delivering talks and speeches since the beginning of civilization. But in this world, I didn't really, expect to find myself for a long time. But over the years, as I moved from New York to LA and I worked with different types of speakers, I learned so much more about how the industry supports all different manner of goals and businesses. So leaving the agencies that I worked for in New York, where I was largely, working with authors who, might have had all different types of day jobs. They weren't just authors, getting them booked and kind of acting just more of as an agent. I got experience working one-on-one with a thought leader named Keith Ferrazzi. He wrote Never Eat Alone and Who's Got Your Back and some popular, business leadership books. And I worked with him as his chief of staff and speaking manager for 3.5 years and really honed in on how speaking was the primary business development tool for him. And speaking in front of large companies was how he developed high-level consulting engagements and high-level coaching and, turned a $30,000 speech into a multi-million-dollar engagement. So I got a lot more strategic in thinking about different speaking opportunities. In the agency world, it's just if someone has the budget, they can pay. So that just kind of kept me going. I got my MBA at UCLA. I went to another agency after business school, and ultimately I started my management firm so I could really work with the people that I was passionate about, that really aligned with what interested me and what I was most excited about promoting, and getting to also help people, figure out what their speaking strategy should be. A lot of people want to be a paid speaker. They think it's super glamorous and it just would be so cool to be paid and to, travel all over. But if you're only interested in just getting paid, you're not thinking large enough. You're not thinking about what that keynote can turn into or how you can, leverage that audience for other things that you might be pursuing. And so I help people now figure out like how speaking can be part of their business development strategy, part of their, plan, but it shouldn't be their only plan. Speakers need a diverse portfolio of products and services that make speaking sustainable. So all of my different experience and kind of being in this world just really kind of brought me to that place where I got to see, what happened in 2020 and how other people were doing speaking in a way that they weren't seeking keynotes. And we did a lot of digital stages, obviously, during 2020 and 2021, when podcasts became even more popular and more virtual events were happening because that's all we could do. And so the world is ever evolving and the strategies are always changing, but the most important thing is that there's no one size fits all. So, you really have to figure out like what's right for you and what's right for your business, and then get help figuring out how speaking fits into that.
I love that. And I mean, what a strong background and experience you got in connecting publishing books and speaking. And like you said, transforming the speaking. You can be a successful speaker and very well known, but that doesn't necessarily mean you monetize. So there are different ways to monetize. And there's a lot of influencers in digital world that are very well known, have millions of views, but they're not monetizing. So I think definitely you helping people get that strategy is helpful for so many of them. So I want to ask you, for some of the people listening, we have a lot of startup entrepreneurs and a lot of them are shy, or they say, I want to have a business, but I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to speak. So what would you tell them why they should be on stage and why they should start speaking in public?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's because it's one of the fastest, most efficient, and most economical ways to grow your business. You can dump tons of money into, Facebook ads or digital marketing and spend tons of money trying to triangulate around your customers. But if you know who your ideal customers are and you know where they gather, what events they may go to, or the podcasts that they listen to, and you can speak directly to them and open the door to having a conversation about your product or business, sometimes you can make that pitch right in the room in front of your ideal clients. It's such an impactful way to really shorten that sales cycle and to improve your skills in so many different ways. If you're thinking this is not something that it's your forte, that's okay. But it should be something that you want to get better at, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You're going to be pitching yourself, your company, all the time. Every time you meet someone, it's not just in elevators, it's everywhere. You got to get really good at getting your point across and helping get people interested in learning more. And speaking is one of the best ways to do that. So you can go to an event and you can be an attendee, right? I'm sure you go to conferences and maybe you get a booth even. How many people will you get to talk to in that booth? Over the course of a couple days, maybe you talk to a dozen or so a day, maybe more, who knows? Can you have that much influence just walking around shaking hands, or just being at a booth, or just being kind of a passive participant in an event? Or are you going to have a much bigger impact if you're one of the people on stage talking about your expertise, adding value to the conversation, to the audience? You're already above 99% of the attendees now at this conference. By being one of the speakers, you're setting yourself apart. So there's so many ways that it can help elevate you, your brand, your business, and get you in front of more people than you can do in all these other channels. So I would just say it's something you really need to consider, because getting in front of your ideal clients in a real way, be able to make a connection, it's easy to click away from an ad. It's harder to click away when someone's talking to you and, can drive you to action right there in the room. And even if you're just lead collecting, it's such a powerful way to lead collect. Whereas again, people click on things all the time online and they say, never mind. I don't want to get all these emails. I'm not going to go through with this. So there's just really a lot of ways that you can leverage speaking in a really strategic way to grow your business, and think about how it can be a tool for you.
Yeah. So I would love to ask you, with all of your experience, what are maybe, I don't know, 3 characteristics that we can find in every successful speaker? Like, what is something they have? Every speaker is different and everyone should keep their individuality, but what is something that all good speakers possess or develop as a skill, as part of their public speaking?
Great question. Yeah. I think there's something that separates people who are subject matter experts and really great at delivering content or information, and what makes a great keynote speaker, or a speaker that can be the opening or the closer, like kind of the higher impact speaker. It's because they are doing more than just conveying information. They're great storytellers, and the storytelling usually creates more of an emotional connection. So they're actually creating more of an emotional experience with the audience. So that's the first thing, is being great storytellers and creating an emotional connection. And the second thing is they really understand the one point that they're trying to deliver. They really are not trying to overwhelm you with all of the things they know on this subject. They're not trying to tell you everything in one presentation. they're really delivering the main message that they want to, you know, ignite a change or get you to take that next step or open your eyes. They're not focused on trying to get you from A all the way to Z, which might be the end of their methodology. They're just helping move you forward in a way that is tangible, is real, that doesn't feel out of reach. So they're very good at understanding kind of where their audience is at and how they can help them make that next step. And the third biggest piece that I think has shifted over the years, maybe decades, from we need speakers with big energy and that are going to really pump people up, that can lead to just like a sugar crash. You know, it's just like you get a high and then a crash. The best speakers are authentic. So this kind of goes back to the emotional connection. They're just real. They're vulnerable. They're able to really make you feel like what they've experienced is similar to what you've experienced and that they struggled, and that means you can, you know, endure the struggles and the challenges, where it used to be all about like, oh, this person climbed Mount Everest and how amazing they are, and the gap between them and the audience can be so wide. Nowadays, like, you know, we identify with people online because they're influencers, because they're natural and authentic and in our face, and we're in their homes and we're in their lives. We don't want to feel like you're up on this stage and up on a pedestal and it's a lecture. The best speakers make everyone feel really, you know, included and connected in that way too. So I think those are really the important elements, you know, that set apart great keynote speakers from people who just can convey and deliver articulate information.
Yeah, I never thought about the third point, and I really like it. And that's how in these times actually change. Like people like, we know that, selfie and low quality videos actually convert better than professional videos. And because people want to connect with something that's real. And like you said, I think everyone listening, even if you're a small entrepreneur, I also always say you have the audience and you have people that want to be where you are now. Even you're looking up to more successful entrepreneurs, you're still steps ahead from some other entrepreneurs or people who want. So there is a value that you can deliver. And I think everyone should start there and start feeling that way, and then connect with the audience through that. So Blair, tell me a little bit about, if listeners, they want to start, maybe they don't have experience in public speaking, where should they start? Like, where do you start? All of a sudden you're booked for, some smaller event or bigger events. So they're freaking out. They're like, should I do a presentation? My English is not good. So all of these things, you become nervous and anxious. And where should people start, and how they, what are some first steps to take on their journey of becoming successful public speaker?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can start. I always encourage people to you really do need to just take the first step and get out there and try. It's not something you can simply practice at home. So whether it's at your school or your kid's school or your church or another community organization or your company or your friend's company, asking people if maybe you can get up and share at different, groups, even participating in different groups where maybe you're not usually the one getting up and speaking, but kind of giving yourself the opportunity to take that step to just get up and speak. And I know these sound like, well, yeah, of course, these are like very basic steps, but sometimes you need to just really get used to that feeling of talking in front of a group, because it's that fear and anxiety that stops us. It's that, and that doesn't necessarily go away even for the biggest professional keynote speakers. So that's okay. But that's what makes it real and authentic for the audience. If you can kind of lean into that fear and anxiety and start telling your story. I'd start by telling your story. Whether you're getting out there on stage for the first time, you're going to be incorporating some part of your story with whatever that message may be. So there's organizations like Toastmasters and NSA and all different groups where you can practice, delivering and different things like that. But in general, like if you're someone that you haven't done much speaking, but you've been invited to speak, and now you're kind of in that position of like, oh, wow, like I want to do this, but I haven't done this, then I'd say the same thing. Like start gathering stories, start thinking about what might relate to that audience, and then what message do you really want to convey, and what's a good story that will open up with that. But if you can open with a story, you're going to capture your audience. That's the hardest part. This is the scariest part, is stepping out on stage and taking that first, how do I begin? But if you just start with a story, you don't have to introduce yourself. You don't have to do all, these things. You just go right into it. You're going to hook everyone, and then you get to just kind of go on from there. So you can get over that big hump really fast. And so if you're nervous about this, start jotting down different stories, start practicing, those maybe with friends or family, or ask them about, hey, what are some what are some good stories of mine? Like sometimes we don't even remember the things that we've done or the things that are coolest about us. And so sometimes getting some feedback from people in your lives that can be honest and in a positive way, remind you of the different things that you might want to talk about that obviously stuck in their brains and their memories about that. So those are all different ways to maybe get started and get kind of the wheels turning and kind of take some of the scariness and the mystery out of it.
Yeah, I love that, and everyone has a story to share. So I think that's absolutely there, and you start from yourself and understanding that your life and your story is also valuable. So okay, so we now know where to start. I would love to know 2-3 mistakes, like things not to do. So when you're doing public speaking, what are some things you shouldn't do? Just couple, maybe there's a lot, but if you can share with us some main things not to do when we're public speaking.
Yeah, the first thing that popped in my head is like, it's great if you can facilitate and engage the audience, but that's kind of like a higher order of speaking. So don't do too much of that if it's not going to allow you to stay on track and if it's not going to deliver more or a better experience for the audience. The most important thing is you landing the plane, so to speak, on delivering your message and connecting with that audience. So don't get too distracted by asking questions or creating opportunities for there to be dead time. And I think a lot of speakers go into it thinking like, oh, I really got to like engage this audience. Well, you're going to engage them by how you present and what you present. And then maybe later, as you get better at that, then you can add in some more of the crowd work that makes things a little more, less predictable. The next thing I would say is like, don't overdo or overthink your like slides or your visuals, and definitely make them visuals. Don't make them, text that you're then repeating to the audience. The worst thing a speaker can do is put up a slide and I can read it in 3 seconds, and then they proceed to basically paraphrase or read verbatim what's on the slide. I mean, this is kind of like amateur anyway. So if you're on a big keynote stage, I hope you've already gone past this, but there is a desire, I think, for a lot of times for people to put things up that they, think is going to reinforce. It's not really reinforcing, it's actually distracting. So use visuals instead that reinforce what you're saying, or that just add a little bit of, ambiance to what you're presenting if you're going to use visuals at all. Some of the best keynote speakers don't use any slides or any visuals. So think again about how are they enhancing and adding to the experience, not detracting or distracting. And the even worse thing, I forgot to mention that you can do, putting text up on a slide, but then talking about something completely different. I see this in videos sometimes. They'll put a testimonial up on a sizzle reel for your speaking, but then the voiceover is something else. And I was like, why you want me to read this, but you want me to listen to the other thing, and it's not the same thing. So be very intentional with the layering of these elements, that you're doing. Again, the most important thing is your delivery and your messaging to them. And the third mistake to avoid is just all about, if this is something you want to do, you got to think about how you show up from the very first phone call to every moment that you were on site. This is a no diva zone. You do not get invited back. If you're a diva, if you're uptight, you got to roll with the punches. If you've got complicated AV, well, you better show up early for that sound check that they've scheduled for you, and make sure all your AV is set up to the best of yours and their ability, and be able to kind of pivot if things don't go right. But I've seen so many speakers' reputations, blow up overnight because of how they behaved on site, and word gets around and things like this. So I guess just, as a word of caution and reminder to everyone, like being a good person still matters. Being a good, easy to work with. Events are stressful situations, especially for the event planners. You don't want to add to that. You want to be early, on time. Don't give them a reason to add any more anxiety to what they're already feeling. So just thinking about how you can show up, not just on stage, but for the entire experience for them, and how you can be as valuable to them as a speaker and a resource, and not as something that detracts from their responsibilities and all the other things that they need to manage. So yeah, I think those are some good things.
Yeah, that's amazing, amazing advice. So Blair, I know we are almost wrapping up the episode. So is there something we haven't mentioned, maybe last advice that you would like to share with everyone listening when it comes to, public speaking or jumping into those waters, something that we can finish the episode with that maybe we didn't mention?
Yeah, well, like I said, speaking always begets more speaking. So if you can get out there, you never know who's in the audience. You never know who needs to hear what you have to say. You may remember in school, like, ask the question because someone else might be too afraid to be asking this question. Don't let your own assumption that what you know or can share, or that your story is what everyone else knows or has experienced. There's so much value for all of us to learn from each other, and don't discount how much value you can add by sharing your story. So don't think of it as this selfish thing that's just meant to feed your ego, or you just want to get the applause. But I always remind my clients, like, you're giving a gift. You're here to give a gift to this audience. You're sharing your knowledge. You are also giving in this sense. So, reframe your thinking about what it really is, and maybe that might help you explore it more. And yeah, I work with speakers, whether they're just getting started or whether they're veterans in their careers and going through changes or relaunches or all sorts of things. So you can find me on LinkedIn or at BBN Creative Management, and you can set up a free 30-minute call and talk about what might be the next step, for you. And I know setting up a call might be scary, but I promise it's fun and creative, and I'll help you figure out, what might be just that one next step. So thank you so much. It's been great chatting, and hopefully you guys are all now thinking about where you're going to be speaking this summer.
Thank you, Blair. You added so much value to everyone. So clear, explained very clear, really a lot of tips from this episode. So thank you for sharing all that with us and sharing your story and your knowledge with us.
My pleasure.
So everyone, thank you for listening. Make sure to connect with Blair, connect with him on LinkedIn, social media, go to his website and book that call. He just offer you a call and advice, meeting you. And make sure to share this episode with at least one person that can benefit as well. Subscribe, give us some likes, comments, and tell us what is a next topic you would like us to discuss and what is necessary for you to help you grow your business. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next episode.